We are here with Dr. Becky Spelman, the private therapy clinic in London. Years ago, Dr. Becky Spelman interviewed me for her channel. It went viral. I'll put the link in the description box. Please go down, check it out, subscribe to her channel. We're hoping to do more collaborations with her. This is the second video in the series, of the Atwood Family series. We've got Ziggy in here now, just a couple months to go. And Dr. Becky is going to introduce herself and tell you guys what we're going to go through a bit today. I'll hand that over to you.
Thank you, Shaun. So I'm a registered psychologist. I have about 14 years postdoctoral training, so I assure you I do know what I'm talking about. But I cover a wide range of topics, but often I lean into relationships, and then that leans into family relationships as well. And then sometimes people come to me for parenting strategies, so that can be quite practical. Now, I must say, most people come to me, parents come to me when their children are already walking, talking and doing behaviors that are not so ideal. So I find it fascinating, and I'm really amazed that you're actually coming so early on to be that conscious about your relationship and your family. So I'm very impressed.
Thanks, yeah, we're trying to head off any problems before they happen.
Exactly.
Amazing. So when you think about parenting, or in the conversations you've had about parenting so far, what kind of conversations have you had?
Well, we've watched a YouTube channel actually on tough love and then going too soft. And what was the other one? There was 3 different types, wasn't there? So, and it was quite inaccurate actually. It said that if you give your child tough love, they're going to be an introvert. If you give them soft love, they're going to be a spoilt brat.
Okay, so kind of very black and white.
Yeah. And in between one was let them get away with a bit and they'll be all right. But no.
Yeah. Okay. And then when you've been talking about these things, have you noticed any consistent thinking between the two of you, or have you noticed any differences in how you would like to go about parenting, particularly on the, being quite domineering and quite strict compared to being much more lenient?
I know, matter of fact, he's going to be the soft touch, like 100%. Because, no, you would, wouldn't you? So
Jen thinks that she's going to be law and order and I'm going to be the party person.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it's going to be a case of, if he wants something, he's going to go ask your dad, not come to me because I'll say no. And I think that's that's how we are in our relationship, isn't it? So, yeah. So
already you have this kind of preconceived idea as what you're going to be like as parents. Shaun's going to be really soft. You're going to be the strict mum. So that's really interesting. What's happened in the relationship? Like, if you can give me an example of something that typically happens in the relationship that leads you to think that this might be the way.
Oh God, Shaun's free spirit way of thinking, and
Jen is stricter with things like that. I like to give people an opportunity. Jen's more ruthless, and as the hormones have kicked in, she's become even more ruthless. I might get a clout during this interview at some point.
Well, I do remember you being very patient, Shaun, because on the day that we were filming many years ago, for some reason, our cameraman was not like your lovely cameraman, James. He was a little bit less competent and took hours to set it up, and then you just sat waiting patiently, just no complaints at all, but just not even an inkling of frustration in your face, just like really calm, as if it just just didn't bother you. So I don't know, I guess, Jen, is this any kind of, I guess, can I draw on this situation and think that actually as a parent Shaun might be very patient?
Oh yeah, okay, we'll take that. Patient.
We had a little bit of a disagreement yesterday, and Jen was getting angry and I could see, and I felt like she was trying to make me angry, and she wanted me to snap, and then she stormed off. And then 10 minutes later, this is outside like some shops. 10 minutes later, she comes back, and I could see she's just raging. So I did this little dance in the street. I did this little dance, and I could see her face was like, and she was almost laughing, but she was trying to maintain this face. And I almost broke it, didn't I, back into her?
Almost.
Okay, so this is absolutely fascinating, because no way is better than the other. These are just types of your, parts of your personality where you're quite different, which is often can be amazing in a couple because you're complementing each other. And it's interesting, Jen, that you said patient/pushover, because then in one way it's like, yes, this patience could be great, but in other ways actually, it could be, you might see it as a pushover because it might be so inconsistent with the messages you're giving to your children that your children might end up receiving one message from you and then another message from Shaun. So then my question to you is, how would the two of you want to try to go about having a consistent parenting strategy, and what would that strategy be if you think about this whole authoritarian versus pushover or very patient parenting?
I think you underestimated me for this role.
You think I'm under? No. I think.
When I need to step up, I can step up.
Yeah, I'll give you that. But I think when it comes, as long as we communicate, it'll be all right. So, like anything, communication is key. But as long as he doesn't try and, like, our son in particular, go to him and it all goes off behind my back. And yeah, I don't think I'd enjoy that.
Okay, so let me make sure I've got that right. So if Shaun, let's just say your child is now 5 and Shaun is communicating with your child, but you don't know the messages he's communicating, then that would be something that would annoy you.
I think so, if it was something that I knew that shouldn't be done.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because if your child does pick up on that inconsistency, then they won't see you as a team, and you have to be a team in order to be able to parent them in a way that's not so confusing. And children, of course, need boundaries. They will, even though they might act like they don't like rules, they absolutely need rules and boundaries to feel safe. And I can give you a few tips on things to so that you can actually start to think about how you might want to go about parenting. So one thing, they'll ask you actually your ideas on it before I give the tip. So let's just say your child is a toddler and draws all over the wall. How would you go about communicating to your child that this is not?
That's something I wanted to talk about, is appropriate punishments, because I've seen throughout the years friends obviously having children, and there's like the naughty step, timeout, removing PlayStations or computer games or something they like to play with, like taking it away.
Yeah.
And what strategy's best? Because they say stuff like that.
That's a really good question. So your child is drawn on the wall with the crayons. You take your toddler and you bring the toddler to a different room and you sit with your toddler and you do time in rather than time out. And the reason for that is that it's better that you're there with them in those difficult emotions, because you've told them, you're saying to them that at this moment, you're coming to this other room with me because you've drawn all over the wall. That's not a good behavior. You're not bad. We love you very much, but you can't draw on the, it's not good to draw on the walls. And then you sit with them in their sadness, because you don't want to feel that, you don't want to make them feel ashamed, but they are going to feel, that you are upset with them. So they're going to feel sadness. And you don't want them to do the time out, because then they're alone with those emotions, and you're teaching their child that actually they have to suffer alone with their emotions. Whereas if you do the time in, then actually they can feel that sadness and then you're there with them. So you stay with them.
I've never heard of time in.
We have now. We're learning.
Yeah.
So here.
That's brilliant.
So this is one situation. I'll give you a different situation. So then your child is now 7, and you want them to come to the dinner table, but they're not playing ball with this. What would you suggest?
I'm gonna sound like such a cow. I'd be like, I'd get to the dinner table, no questions asked. I'd be like, if you don't have dinner, you can't have any of your toys. Like, or just he's playing a game or whatever. Yeah. Can't see your mates for a month. Grounded. Straight.
For a month. No, or a year even.
Yeah. There we go. Can't do anything you love for a year.
Shaun, what would you?
I would be the same. I'd be like, get your ass in here now. But I think I know where Jen's coming from, because when I go to my sister's house, I'm like the cat in the hat, and I always end up getting told off. So I have this thing called money game, where I get them all excited and ask them questions and just throw money around the room, and they run after it. And then when we go in the garden, I'm almost trampolining them over the neighbour's fence. My sister and my mum come running out. Stop doing that! Stop doing that!
He's like the big child.
But I wonder. This is like my sister's house. I've got this bit of time with my niece and nephew. It's not like I've raised them from scratch. And I think Jen's judging me from
what I've seen so far.
But if I'm raising kids from the beginning,
fun time, Shaun.
I'm not going to be the cat in the hat at home.
Okay, so what would you do? Dinner table situation, and your child is just not coming to the
Get your ass in here now, or you're not going to have your PlayStation or whatever it is.
Okay, all right, so this is interesting because you're actually both consistent on this in actually being quite a domineering parent when it comes to dinner table, you know, or something where you need your child to cooperate. And can I make a suggestion? Okay, so the suggestion is that actually you give them limited choices rather than commands. So rather than get your ass to the dinner table now, would you like to come to the dinner table now or in 5 minutes? So you're giving them a very limited choice. Now, bear in mind, your child is going to be quite young at this point, so they're not going to notice that the choices are kind of ridiculous, you know, because now or in 5 minutes, does it really make any difference? But actually, you're giving them choice, and therefore they don't feel like they're being commanded to do something, so they feel a little bit more in control over the situation.
That is strategic.
And you can bribe them if the dinner's getting cold. Obviously, you come now or 5 minutes, your food's cold, optional.
What if your child doesn't care about cold food?
Well, that's a salad, yeah. But yeah.
So it's all about negotiation. So try to negotiate as much as possible rather than telling your child what to do. And then, what are your thoughts on family meetings?
I like them. I like the idea of that. Yeah. If there is a problem that keeps arising and we need to sit down, I think that's really important. Yeah. Communication.
Yeah, I agree.
How would you think about doing family meetings? As in, like, how often would you have them? Who would you include in the meetings? What would go on the agenda?
We could bring you in, couldn't we? There we go.
Every week.
I think once a week would be, or whenever.
Could you give us
necessary.
a scenario that would require a family meeting?
Well, yeah, the family meetings. What I have in mind when I think of family meetings is absolutely everything to do with your lifestyle. Holidays, if you decided to donate money to a charity, if there was serious problems, if there was behavioral problems, what schools your children should go to, like every single decision, both fun and meaningful things and problems as well.
Should we be having them now?
Well, there's no, you know, you can do whatever you want. There's no should. But family meetings they're a really nice idea, and also they're a very interesting concept to include your child in family meetings from a really young age, and start to give them some responsibilities that perhaps parents might not normally give responsibilities. So let's just say you decided to donate a small amount of money to a charity. Your child might be 5, but you might say to them, you know, what do you think? And actually from a very young age, start to actually give them some control over some of the decisions in the family. Now, I'm not saying you have to do this, because this isn't necessarily like a highly evidence-based strategy, whereas some of the strategies I talk about are. But it's a very interesting concept when you start to give your children family responsibilities from a young age, so they actually start to feel like they've got a lot more control. Now, some people would say, well, that's ridiculous. The child can't have any control over the family money at 5 years old. But other people might argue that actually this helps your child feel like they do have control and responsibility, and then they start making wise decisions for the family and start to consider the family unit.
I really like that because it makes the child feel included then in the decision-making processes and part of something more than being us versus them.
I like that.
Yeah.
Teach them about taxes and all that.
Yeah.
Important stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And so what else, what other things when you think about parenting do you feel that might be challenging for you? Particularly, I guess, let's focus on when the baby is first born, because that's going to be a really stressful period for both of you.
Yeah.
So Jen has only just moved in with me this year.
Okay.
So that was
Congratulations.
Thank you. That was an adjustment for us both, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And now, with Ziggy about to happen, there's going to be a whole new level of adjustment, isn't it? Mm. So, what do we need to be aware of so we don't...
It's things like the night feed. You've got it in your head that you're not doing any of them. He really thinks...
I'm joking with you. I'll do what I can.
You're just saying that on camera, but No.
I've recently had shingles and I was up all night long with things and it was mad. So that's brought me in. This is
going to be a really stressful period of time for you, and it's going to really test the relationship because sleep goes out the window. You're really, really not going to get a lot of sleep for quite some time when the baby is born. So this is going to test your relationship to a whole new level. So I think I'm glad you brought this up, Jen, because it's a really important thing to consider. Is actually what is the plan for nighttime when the baby is waking up? What do you think you might do on that, or what do you think?
Well, we're quite lucky that we have separate beds, so he will obviously sneak off to that one. So I'll have Ziggy in with me, obviously a bedside crib. And because I aim on breastfeeding, it's going to be, I think, 90% up to me. If it was formula or bottle, then I think at that point it could be 50-50, but I'm going to attempt, obviously, breast, but who knows. So, because you're not going to want to, in the middle of the night, wait, what's the point of him coming in the room and when I've got to do all the work anyway? So...
Look, if you're giving me a pass, I'm not going to complain, but I will do whatever I can, and I have been broken into the sleep thing now. So
by your shingles.
And then arguments might become different because of the tiredness. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, at the moment, I actually get up every 2 hours anyway, in the night for about 5 minutes. So I think it's prepared me for it. I'm pretty sleep deprived all the time now.
And we've slept separately since Jen has moved in.
Because I snore.
And Jen sleeps with the lights on and the TV on full blast.
It makes it sound like
I sleep in darkness, in complete silence.
A bit of meditation music last night I had, and a little light on. It's not like I've got like surgical lights on it.
But usually it's Cartel Girlfriends or whatever it is.
Cartel
What is it? What was that show you watch? What is it?
What was it? I can't remember. Busy Mums or something. Cartel Mums.
Working Mums.
Working Mums, that's it, yeah.
And then what about your ideas on children crying? Because the baby's going to cry, in the early years, your baby's going to be crying quite a lot. What are your thoughts on that?
We're praying for a sleeper.
If you want them, you won't get it. So I've heard that, I don't know, that you hear all these different sort of theories on if you let the baby cry for a little bit, it will train them to not cry in the long run, or you shouldn't feed them as soon as they start crying. You should feed them before they start crying, like at regular intervals, so they don't get in the habit of crying. I don't know.
So you're like receiving a lot of information about how to respond
when you're everywhere,
and it's inconsistent.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are your thoughts on the cried out method, where you?
I don't think I could do that.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
do you want me to tell you a bit of information about the cry?
Please.
Yeah, so the cry out method is completely outdated, and it really is not a good way to it's not a good way to go at all. Up until around 82, there wasn't really any good research to say otherwise. So they really believed the cried out method was going to make your child very resilient, and that if you coddled them, it wasn't a good thing. But now what they know is that actually your child absolutely needs you to respond to their cries, and this comforts them. This will help them regulate their emotions and learn how to regulate their emotions in life, because if they start to realize you are there for them when they cry, even though it can be very difficult, and children can cry a lot depending on what type of baby you have, that actually responding to their cries is the right thing to do.
What are the root causes of babies crying?
Oh, there's so many different things. It's their way to communicate with you. They might need to be fed, might need to be changed. And actually, it can be very frustrating for parents when they've done all those things and then they don't know what else their child needs. Now, some parents get very in tune and they start to recognize the cries, and they know actually which cry means which. It can be very frustrating when your child is crying, you don't know what's wrong, and that's where actually some couples really get tested, because their patience is tested. And this is where things happen that are not perfect, and this is where a lot of mothers feel very guilty if they just lose their cool and they just end up shouting because they're tired, and they completely they just lose control over their anger, which I assure you is very human, and you don't need to feel guilty if this ever happens at any point with your child. But it's what we do with our anger afterwards, or it's how we respond to the situation afterwards. So I guess that's a question for you. As the child gets older and you just lose your cool and you raise your voice, how would you repair that situation?
I don't know, I feel incredibly guilty at doing that.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. I think that it's inevitable, I think.
Yeah.
Especially if they do something like that, when they're walking, they go to run out in front of a car.
Yeah.
And I see parents lose their stuff, like, with it, and I'm like, I can see why. It's just fear. And the child doesn't know that. I don't know how I deal with it after.
So there's the 3 R's I give people. So there's the reflect, rewind, and repair. So you're reflecting on the situation, and in that time, you can just acknowledge that you're not perfect. That even you might have done a behavior you're not proud of, like such as shouting at your child, but you were really tested in that moment, or scared for your child in that moment if they've run out in front of a car. So then just reflecting on it, and then just repairing the situation, just going to your child and basically saying, I know that wasn't the right behavior. I know I shouldn't have shouted. I lost my cool. Admitting where you've done something that you think was wrong, and and apologizing to them. And so all of these situations, because we're not perfect as humans. As parents, we can make a lot of mistakes, but actually just taking that time to reflect on it and then repair it with your child can go a really long way.
Yeah.
I think you would be the general enforcer, and if it was something really serious, I would have to.
Why do some parents become general enforcers like myself?
This is an interesting comment. So why do you feel that Jen would be the enforcer?
Because of her opening statement today, saying I'm the laid-back one and you're the disciplinarian. I think she's ready to discipline.
Okay.
But I'm more laid-back in general.
As in, so do you mean
Unless
that...
something's really serious, then...
Do you mean that you don't think you would raise your voice by you don't think you would lose your
Jen
voice?
would raise her voice before me over things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jen gets
I'd
mad at
probably
things
agree
before
with that, yeah.
long before I do, at people before I do.
Okay, so
etc.
raising voice might not be an incident for you, but there might be other times when you do something that's less ideal, because no parent is perfect.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of situations where you feel could happen if you just kind of think of the future and your child growing up? They could be any age.
I asked you about
What
this.
do you think? Like, how, any age? You mean like teenage?
I think-
Oh, there's loads there. I mean, if they do the
Yeah.
stuff I did,
Yeah.
then
That's what I was going to get to.
my head will
like,
explode.
Like, what if... We've got to be careful because of the channel, but he started doing illegal substances. I've asked him that, like, how would we handle something like that?
Well, if you tell them not to do it, they're going to do it, aren't they? Kids at that age are rebellious. That's my understanding.
Yeah.
So you've got to come at them in a friendlier way, I think, to head it off before it happens. Perhaps have talks about my experience, and here's the dangers, all the people I've lost on that road, and what can happen.
Yeah, I wouldn't promote it.
Safety would be paramount to me.
This is really interesting because just from observing the two of you, there's going to be times when the two of you don't agree, but that there's no right or wrong, that you'll both have very valid points, but that you won't agree. And then this can be very challenging as parents, because the two of you are supposed to be a team, and you're supposed to always show that team front, that you've reached this consistent idea between the two of you, and then you're ready to present that consistent idea to the child. So I think this could be a good time for like a bit of an exercise. So let's now really imagine the child is 14 years old and they really have become very curious in substances, and it's now your task that your child's coming home at 6 p.m. and you can have a chat with them, and it's now 4 p.m. So you literally have this time right now in this moment to come up with a consistent parenting strategy, even though you're coming into this conversation having two different beliefs. In the next 5 minutes, I'd like you to have a chat with one another and by the end of the conversation, have come to some kind of compromise as to a consistent message that you're going to say to Ziggy at 6 p.m. when he comes home, because he needs some guidance and advice and boundaries.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I work in drugs education in schools, don't I? speak to 14-year-olds.
yeah.
So I would lay down something similar to
But we had what Becky's saying is we're having a discussion like 2 hours prior to him coming home.
Yeah.
So, right, Ziggy came back stinking of you know what the other day. We need to have a chat with him. What would you say?
Well, that's the thing. Is he thinking about doing it?
No, he's
Or have we found in his bedroom, or there's a smell in his bedroom? What's the preferred scenario here?
Well, he's thinking of something, so that's
Okay.
the scenario.
Thinking
If he's thinking of green, then we would have to have a word, wouldn't we, about what...
well, smoking's bad enough. You could go down the whole lung cancer route.
I would emphasise the consequences. I say that these things do start as fun at first, but every time you take it, the side effects, the harm is rising in the background, and you're always trying to get back to your early highs. And what happens is down that road...
I mean, Ziggy's coming home at 6 p.m. You guys, you only have a few
Well,
minutes to reach your
Do
decision.
you know what? I've got to praise him for coming home at 6 p.m. I stay up till 10 at least.
I think, right, all right, he doesn't know we know, right? But we know, and we're going to confront him now. So
Yeah.
we've got to firstly say, look,
I think I'd have to wind him up
Do you
first.
think
Be
it would
like,
be-
what's that smell?
because of our histories, would it get to this point where he's sneaking behind our backs? Because of our histories, don't you think it would have something we would openly have discussed?
I mean, how do you openly discuss that with children?
I would say, here's my drug history before he gets to the point of temptation.
Do you think Shaun's history will okay our child to do stuff like that because he's like, well, my dad did it?
Do you want me to give you a little bit of information on, you know, sort of, I guess, how you might want to go about this?
Yes.
Now this is.
He's come home, gone to bed.
We'll start.
Okay, so so you really want to. You want to have all of the research prepared, but you're not going to speak to your child like you're a scientist or anything like that. But not all drugs are the same. So there's a lot of, you know, and you could give them some visuals that are, you know, you're not going to give them a PowerPoint presentation, but some of the visuals on drugs, which you'll have seen, Shaun, are very interesting, that like alcohol and smoking are killing far more people than, psychedelics as in psilocybin. The amount you would have to take to die is extraordinary, whereas if someone takes heroin, you're talking about a very different amount of drugs. So there's a lot of great research out there that can help educate your child on, you know, what drugs are. And you can definitely, you know, because you speak to people in schools, as you know, you can present that information from a young age so that you're already encouraging that this can be spoken openly about, and they're not going to be shamed for doing any of this behavior. And then when he's coming home at 6 p.m., you want to create a safe space for him. Because actually, if he's doing anything that you don't approve of, that's quite intimidating, quite scary. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if he's, you know, becoming sexually active, sooner than you would like, or whatever, or if it is actually something that's illegal. You don't want your child to feel that they're in an unsafe space, or that they're going to be shamed for it. So you want to try and create that safe space by basically saying things like, this is a safe space. No matter what you tell us in this space, we love you as parents, and we're not going to make you feel bad about the behavior. We just want, you know, to have a chat with you to see if we can offer any advice or guidance. So trying to make it as safe as possible so that he can actually open up about whatever is going on. Because I think the two of you kind of mentioned that you don't want to, you know, try and control him. Or I think you said, Shaun, yeah, that if you say it in a certain way, he's gonna go against it.
Yeah, do it anyway.
Yeah. Hopefully my backstory will put him off.
Or send him to sleep.
And it's quite an interesting, but you know, it's an interesting journey you've had, Shaun. How would that influence you as a parent? What kind of things would you like to guide your child on or advise your child on as a result of what you've been through?
So I have a child in America, and I was running around with ecstasy and crystal meth and not being a good parent. So this is my opportunity to make up for that. But that child did tell me because she's doing great in her life. I said, how did you turn out so well, you know, after what I put you through? And your mum, and she said, well, both my parents were pretty crazy. And that was an example of me not to become crazy. That's why I've become normal. So I feel really guilty in my heart because I was, you know, doing all the drug community things I was doing.
Yeah.
But this is an opportunity for me to do the right thing.
Yeah. So you want to be a really conscious parent?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's nice.
Thanks.
That's right.
And I think that's quite striking, actually, the two of you being here so early, far earlier than I would ever see parents, is just how conscious you're being about this. And, you know, it's sad to see in the world that people just have babies with putting no thought into it. But actually, the two of you are really putting conscious thought into how you want to parent your child. And although you clearly don't have all the answers, no one does, you're very curious about it, and you want to kind of go on that journey together of like being like, okay, well, you might not always agree, and you might not always have the answers, but let's kind of figure this out together as a team.
Well, I've lived such a crazy life, and Jen's had quite a crazy life as well. And it's like part of us has never really grown up. So I think our emotional immaturity, we need to snap out of that now because we are having a family together. And I don't know how much you want to say, but Jen's been arrested a few times as well.
Well, yeah, I was a terrible teenager and a rebellious, terrible teenager into my early 20s.
What led you to be that way? What was it about your parenting, the parenting style that you received that led you to rebel?
I had a terrible setup at home. So
Yeah.
brilliant mum, real parent left when I was very young.
Yeah.
Stepfather was not a very nice man.
Yeah.
So when he left, him and my mum split up when I was about 13. Being that my mum was quite a pushover, I then became the ultimate rebellious little.
Yeah.
Like, I would do anything and everything, steal, break into like football grounds, set off fireworks, and my friends would steal cars. Like, it was. I don't know why I went down that route. I was really quite a terrible child.
It sounds like you were just really misunderstood, and that you actually didn't have someone at home thinking about your emotions and be unable to have those conscious conversations with you about how you were actually feeling on the inside.
No, and because my brother and my sister weren't like that, which is because you've met them, they're really quite.
I met all the family just, what was it, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the same story as me. I come from a loving, great family, and look how I turned out. And I said something
Mine like a
to
normal country Wiltshire folk, like really normal family, and yeah, I'm the black sheep who's just. I was terrible up until I was about 25. I was a terrible person.
It's it really, you know, it really shows how like parenting strategy, like there's no perfect parenting strategy, and our personalities mean that we respond in certain ways to certain environments. But actually, what you often find in these environments, although families might look very loving, that actually underneath that there's still a lot of emotions bubbling up for these young people, and when they're not responded to, that actually this is when, you know, behaviors can exhibit in all different ways. For some child it might be they've just become very introverted. For other children it might be that they're stealing cars, but often it's just, you know, their best way of trying to cope with whatever is going on. A question for both of you is there anything that you received or didn't receive in your parenting where you want to be absolutely different, and you want to make sure that actually you just do things differently because you've seen the impact of what's happened with your
God,
parenting?
yeah. I think that's why I put off having children till I'm in my mid-30s now.
Yeah.
Not that that's, you know, particularly late, but a lot of people perceive it as late.
Yeah.
Is because I couldn't have a child with someone who wasn't going to stick around.
Yeah.
Due to what happened to me as a child.
Yeah.
And I had a real big anger towards men for many years.
Yeah.
So because of that, and I just don't want to instill that in my child.
Yeah.
Like not a hatred towards men in particular, but like just disrespect for the other parent or just a bad upbringing. Because it wasn't like I was brought up in poverty or anything like that. It was more just my situation just felt destroyed it was from the day I was born.
Yeah. So then the family unit is really important to you, that actually showing this strong front as a family and being consistent as a family is something that you always want your child to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you had a lot of trauma at the hands of your stepdad, didn't you?
Oh yeah, he wasn't a very nice man at all.
Yeah. It's really tough.
Yeah. So, and you just think like the only nice like father figure I had, the only decent man I had in my life was my grandfather. Like, and the men my mum would choose were just god awful men.
Yeah.
So
you've been really conscious in like wanting something very different for yourself.
I've put it off for years.
Yeah.
Like, and made various different choices throughout my life. So I didn't have children, just because I didn't want to be in that situation. I was so like scared of that situation.
Yeah.
So.
It's amazing actually the age you are because of your intellect, that actually a woman of your age can make so many decisions where actually someone, if you were having a child in your, let's just say 20s, you just don't have the emotional maturity to make the kinds of decisions that you can now be making. So it's quite admirable that you've decided to do this now where you've got so much control over your life.
I'm glad, because if I had a child in my 20s, I can't bear to think what type of parent I would have been. Yeah. I was so mature and just wanted to go out with my friends all the time, party and holidays and selfish behaviour, whereas now it's settled. So
it's a good time.
It's a good time now. Yeah.
Shaun, what about your parenting, and not to criticise anyone, but is there anything that just wasn't effective for you?
So I look back at my parenting and I'm really happy. Never had any trauma from my parents like you suffered. So I feel blessed. People, when I tell some stories, they laugh and say I was spoiled, but I think I quite enjoyed being spoiled. One story is I think we went to Cornwall or somewhere for a holiday, and they couldn't find a fish and chips shop that sold fish fingers. So
that's all we used to eat.
They drove around for hours looking for a place to get fish fingers and chips. This is what I put them through. So wow. I imagine that is something that's not, I don't want to be that flexible with. But even though I enjoyed it, I can't drive around for 2 hours.
So your parents were perhaps, they were very accommodating, and maybe some people might see it as over-accommodating.
Some people have laughed and said I'm spoiled when I've told them these stories about the fish fingers and chips and things like that.
Would you say your parents are quite relaxed? They're really nice people, really loving.
My dad is very relaxed. He's only just started doing yoga in recent years, because every time we've tried to get him to do yoga, he said, I'm so relaxed I don't need yoga. But he does it with my mum, because my mum has anxiety and depression. And my mum was adopted. She spent 30 years trying to track her birth mum. She wrote a book about it, but that caused her, when she found out as a teenager, she was at a doctor's appointment or a therapist appointment or something, and the therapist just said, by the way, do you know you're adopted? That's how she found out. Shocking. So her whole world turned upside down at that moment. And my dad's been her rock, and he's also been my rock as well when I went through what I went through in Arizona, for example.
Yeah.
And so there's two different personalities types in my parents. My dad was totally relaxed and calm, and my mum who's wonderful but suffers anxiety and depression.
Was there anything, so you say that, okay, on one hand maybe they're a bit too lenient, but you're not sure about that because you
I enjoyed it.
Enjoyed it.
I didn't see it as a problem, me getting driven around to find fish fingers and chips. So when I was a kid, I was loving it.
So that tells me that you would probably be quite lenient, which Jen has already quite clearly stated today. Yeah. So Jen, if you started to see that Shaun was being the the nice parent, because that could make you look like the tough parent, and then you could see that your child is sort of gravitating more towards their father because he's the one who's more lenient. How would the two of you tackle that one if Jen, you thought that Shaun was being too
Jen
too
speaks
nice?
her mind right away.
I'd have to sit down with him. I wouldn't do it in front of Ziggy. I would go separately and be like, look, come on, I need you to have my back.
Yeah.
Let's start being a team. Because if he was, I'd be like, come on, don't let him get away with everything. We want boundaries. It's I just don't want him to grow up like a spoiled soul. You see those guys, girls out there who are just so full of themselves, egotistical, narcissistic, I guarantee, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, it's because they were spoiled as children.
Okay, so then you'd pull Shaun aside. You'd have a conversation in private outside of the child's ear, and you would try to negotiate a boundary with Shaun. And then Shaun, what would you say? So Jen wants something a bit more. Let's actually pick a specific situation. Let's just say bedtime. Bedtime is 8 p.m. for the child, but you think the child has asked you if they can just stay up an extra hour until 9. You thought it was okay, but Jen's pulled you aside and said, look, we need...
Okay, I'll get to that specific example, but I need to give a bit of a backstory to it. The thing I like about Jen, and the thing that why we work so well, is that Jen doesn't let things build up in her head and then snap. Mm-hmm. It's not like a family meeting we have, but like if something's on Jen's mind, instead of watching Netflix, she'll turn Netflix off and we'll just sit. We'll be lying down and we'll look at each other.
Great.
And we'll say, right, let's have a conversation about how we're feeling about whatever, and it'll all come out, and we do that, don't we?
Yeah.
Great. And you're really open to that.
And I can sense from her body language when she wants to say something to me as well. I'll turn everything off and say, look, let's have a little chat.
Yeah.
It's like our pre-family meetings.
Lovely. That's great.
So I think that if there was an issue like that, it wouldn't be a recurrent thing. It would be something that would be at its genesis, and Jen would say to me right away what the problem was, and
he's going to be tired the next day. I can't be dealing with that.
Yeah.
He's going to bed now.
Yeah.
Great. So you're really in touch with your emotions, and you kind of know when you need to articulate yourself, so it doesn't boil.
Yes.
Or it doesn't get left lingering.
Yes.
Okay, so you've got really good problem solving as a couple, which is a real strength of yours. So that seems like it's a strength that you can then carry on into your parenting, because there's going to be a lot of problems along the way.
The other thing is, I had some quite dramatic relationships in America.
Yeah.
And when Jen gets mad, and she says, I'm not getting mad. I mean, for example, my first wife, I would come home from work and she would jump in the shower with a Ginsu knife and go to cut my dick off. That's my yardstick now for...
It's quite extreme.
That's my yardstick for...
So I'm a sweet angel.
You're like, if you're a bit mad, you're like, can I talk to you, Shaun?
But as terrifying as that was at the time...
You hit the jackpot.
The hardest things I've gone through in my life, those behaviours with those relationships and the conditions I went through incarcerated, have made me quite patient, as you pointed out. Around that time, I did an interview on BBC Radio 4 about the philosophy of patience.
Yeah.
Because to get to see a doctor takes days. You have to fill out a form, hope they sign off on it, get transported to jailmate, get locked down, you get sent back, go back the next day. All those things have set something in my head whereby unless things are extreme, it doesn't bother me anymore.
Yeah. Would that ever be a problem, or would that ever cause you a problem, Jen?
Well, sometimes Jen says, why aren't you getting mad? It's like she wants a reaction.
I think that's my insecurities, though.
Is it?
Well, it must be. I don't. You could. Who on earth wants the other person to get mad because they're mad?
So, like yesterday, for example, right? And that was.
I didn't want you to get mad.
But I was kind of thinking that you did want me to get mad, because you previously said you want me to get mad.
I don't know what I wanted.
And I did the silly dance outside the shop.
Trying to diffuse the situation.
And you wouldn't diffuse.
No, and that's why I went off. I got in my car and went off to go get my nails done. Because I thought that's the only way I'm going to get away from him.
She took time out, she spaced.
That's the best thing.
Jen will go on walks, I'll jump in a car.
Okay, so so you basically...
Detach for an hour or two till I calm down.
If I can't calm her down, she'll just go somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so how will this work when you have a child at home? You are getting quiet, your blood is boiling, and Shaun is staying really patient, and you're getting mad that he's not reacting to your child's naughty behaviour, not your naughty child, because children are not naughty, they're just carrying out naughty behaviour. But how would you tackle that situation? Because you can't really get out of it because there's parenting duties to be
Here you go,
done.
Ziggy, I'm off to towns.
So if I see that you're getting to the point where you're getting now, and you've only got like this during this, so I imagine that when you're not this,
Well, not
you go back to how you was before this?
Maybe. You don't know.
Well, if you don't, and I see that you're that tense and you need to go off somewhere, I'll be just like, go and do your thing, and I'll just stay with Ziggy. And because you always come back completely transformed.
I know.
You've got my nails done.
It's on my own. Yeah.
It's really remarkable that you're able to tackle your emotions in that way. You know, you can feel them, you know what you need, you address it, and actually Shaun doesn't really, suffer the consequences of your
No, I
emotions.
can tell, but I even know that I'm being irrational at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if I don't take myself out of this, I'm just going to keep going
Okay.
round in a circle. And so,
I think something else that's really different about our relationship is, in all my other relationships, like I met the person, we like wooed, dated, whatever. With Jen, we were colleagues for 2 years, and we would go on the road, and we were really close, and it's like we were really best friends. And I've never been in a relationship where I've gone from like having a best friend for years to suddenly having a relationship whereby you kind of already know everything about the person and how.
Yeah.
It's not like you're in a full-on romantic relationship and you're having to learn the ropes of how that person's psychology is.
Yeah.
Do you feel that having a friendship is different?
yeah, because a lot of relationships, you go into the guy or girl is full of shit. And you've got to weave your way through the crap out there because they're all lying or bloody pumping themselves up about something to make themselves, to sell themselves. Whereas if you've been friends with someone, you know what they're selling is genuine.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Do you not find that if you go
I
on...
do, but that's just highlighted something to me as well about Jen's materialism.
Right.
And what is that, Shaun?
So, when I was in my 20s, I've got to be a millionaire by 30 or else I'm going to kill myself. Ended up living in $1 million house on the side of a mountain. SWAT team raided, and I learned when all that was stripped from me, and I've done a TED talk on this, that once I got detached from all that material stuff, it was painful, but then I felt liberated, and I wrote to my sister, I feel like a mad monk in a cave right now. I'm not thinking about all those material things I've coveted my whole life. I am free, and happiness is just in your heart and what your thoughts make it. Now I've gone through that pain of being detached from that. I'm still an entrepreneur, and I still believe in being successful, but I've not got this mercenary business plan anymore to make me wealthy by the time I'm 30. I'm happy with what I've got. I wake up, throw some monkey nuts at the squirrels and just get on with my day. Well, I think Jen's still mercenary.
I'm going to stop you right there. Do you know how many pairs of shoes he owns? Seriously.
Going back to the 1990s when I had a clothing store. I've got bags of shoes from the 90s.
No, but the other
Haven't I?
day you popped into London for a
'Cause finally-
bit of work, and you come back with another new pair of shoes.
God.
Right, and how many suits he buys? Right, he cannot.
We work in media, Jen.
Let's
We work in media, Jen.
How can you give me material?
Girls new looks constantly on camera.
Because I like to spend money on my hair, nails. Obviously, he doesn't have to worry about that. But all the stuff that he doesn't have to worry about, he thinks I'm materialistic.
But everything I'm getting is to present myself for the business.
My
isn't
hair,
it?
my nails, my clothes, my Go
So
on.
this is an
Please.
interesting. So if we make this relevant to parenting, you might have ideas about one another. So so Shaun, you have an idea about Jen that she's more materialistic than you. Jen has an idea that you're actually more materialistic than you like to make out. So when you have these strong ideas about the other person that they don't necessarily agree with, what are your thoughts on the way you would communicate to your child about your views of the other person, the views of your partner?
I don't know. I think
Jen's like, private school, he's going to run his own business, he's going to be like a billionaire. He's going to inherit your empire.
no, that's not.
This is how it works.
When we were on the way to find out the sex of the baby, my mother asked him, "Did you like a boy or a girl?" Shaun's reply was, "A boy to inherit the empire."
I was just trying to be
didn't even
funny.
blink.
I was trying to be funny. I was trying to get rises out of Jen.
Deadly serious.
I was trying to get rises out of Jen. Being fake sexist just to get rises out you guys.
Yeah, right, okay. But I think to get it across to, going back to your question,
There's a grain of truth in every joke. Is that what you're going to say?
No.
So yeah, you're on your own with the child, one of you or the other, and you're communicating about your thoughts, ideas, feelings about your partner. What's your view on that?
Respect. I think it's really important to teach him respect to his other half, man,
And what
woman,
does that look
whatever.
like in the words that you would say?
Compromise. I hope that we portray that. Compromise, communication, honesty, trust, sharing. It's important to share because I'm undecided whether I'll have one or two right now.
Okay.
And there's the whole discussion of only children spoiled, which I don't think they are if they've got enough people around and love's love. You know, it doesn't matter if they have a sibling or not. But yeah, just, I mean, how would you portray it?
Portray what?
Like a good relationship to Ziggy.
How to portray a good relationship.
So I'll give you an example. Jen's really annoyed you and you're very, very tense and you do not agree at all on this. And then you get in the car and you're driving Ziggy, who's now 12, to soccer. And then he asks you, he's like, oh, why are you annoyed with mummy? What do you say?
I would
Because I'm
say
always wrong.
that when you're in a long-term relationship with someone, there's going to be ups and downs. But if you truly love each other, you will figure out ways to work through those ups and downs. And sometimes one person is hot-headed, sometimes the other person is hot-headed, and you've got to have mechanisms to let that pressure out of the system. So Jen will go and you do your running or do your walks or do you go and get your nails done. We did have some disputes earlier in the year when Jen first moved in, and I would go to the gym and kick the bag and do weights and things like that. So I'd explain to him, these things are going to arise in the natural course of a long-term relationship. If you love the person, you're going to put the work in to get through it. And it's good to have mechanisms in advance in your mind that you can fall back on to get through those ups and downs.
Okay.
Yeah.
It might be good for the two of you to do like a shared principle sheet and come up with principles for your family strategy, because there might be principles like from what we've just talked about, because you seem to, from what you're saying, Shaun, I'm concluding that you have this principle of never say something bad about Jen in front of your child, that because you're this consistent. You're showing this strong team front, even though you're furious, although it sounds like it's going to be very hard to...
It would take a lot to get me.
It takes a lot to get you angry.
Yeah.
Well, on this occasion, she's done it. Because you also have a child here and life has become a lot more stressful than you ever thought. But it sounds like one of the principles that both you might want to put on it is to not speak badly about your partner, or and whatever other principles come up, so that you can refer back to that shared sheet from time to time, tweak and change it, and have your plan of how you want to.
It's horrifying to me when you see these divorces and the parents use the children as pawns and each play the other side and tell them all the horrible things the other one's done. To me, that's disgusting.
Despicable. So I think if that day might arise.
So we're reading a love book right now.
No, he's reading a love book.
And in the love book, it says...
we're reading a love book now, yes.
I'm trying to read it every other page to Jen when she's got a moment. One of the pages I read to was, but one of the pages it said, one of the obstacles to a long-term relationship working is not believing that love will last. And Jen's always cracking jokes about when we're going to break up, what this is going to happen, that's going to happen. And I always throw the book in her face.
With the highlighter on the exact line.
Yeah.
It's like I'm manifesting a breakup.
You're not making the jokes as much as you used to, but you have just brought it up right now when the divorce happened.
I say that might go on the principles, if you could agree on a principle to do with actually comments about the relationship or comments about love, that whatever you manage to, because the more that you can agree in terms of the family strategy, the more you can be this consistent team.
Jen and I have never lasted longer than 3 years with anyone throughout our entire lives.
No.
You've never lasted more than 3 years with a partner?
Yes.
No.
Okay, how long have you been together for?
We've only just moved in together from the beginning of the year.
Okay.
We were colleagues for 2 years before that.
Yep. So then it's still a relatively new relationship for both of you, and then you're embarking on this huge challenge still quite early on. That must be quite anxiety provoking at times for both of you.
Not really, no, because we were best friends. I spent a lot of time with him, and we weren't just friends for 2 years. So.
With benefits, as you can see.
There's evidence of that.
Struggling to see the benefits, will you?
But still, I wonder though if that does come up as like a low-level anxiety for either of you from time to time, because because your other relationships haven't necessarily lasted very long, and then you're in this relationship. Of course, it started in a very different way with this slow start and building a friendship first, which sounds like it's been a really secure foundation for both of you. But I wonder if there is anxieties about from time to time about the relationship staying together.
My previous partners have bailed because they've realised over time I'm an extreme workaholic.
Okay.
Jen and I work together, so a lot of our conversations revolve around. For example, my previous girlfriend is the only partner I've actually lived with since I come back from America for the first time. I lived in my friend's bedroom for 10 years, doing my stuff. Mm-hmm. Met her, fell in love, moved in together, and when she would come home from her normal work day, 5 or 6 at the office, wherever it was, she'd expect me to completely turn off my work brain and just spend time with her and do nice things with her for the rest of the evening, which I completely understand where she was coming from. But in the kind of work I do, where news can break, something can happen, or there's a crisis I've got to fix, I'm getting a call, I've got to go and deal with that, became increasingly irritating to her. Mm-hmm. And the manifestation of that stress then started to make me feel uncomfortable. Like I'm thinking, if I get a call now, it's going to ruin our evening. But with Jen already us both integrated into collaborating on things for a couple of years, and we constantly talk about work things, it gives us endless things to talk about as well.
Yeah. Romantic, eh?
So there's a huge safety in the fact that you are doing this project together, and that actually if work calls, Jen is with you.
She doesn't get pissed off. For example, it was Jen's birthday recently. We went to Holland for 2 days. Mm-hmm. News broke on something, and Jen gave me her blessing to do a 1-hour live stream from the hotel room to keep that story going. And you were so cool about that.
Because I could nap.
This is great.
I didn't really
You were so cool about that. You were like, take your time, just do it. It's got to be done. Then we'll go to the rave afterwards.
And we did, because I knew what time the actors I wanted to see. It wasn't going to get in the way, so...
Okay, so you feel very supported in this relationship.
I do feel very supported. With the others, it's become a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got this foundation of security with this relationship. What's your plan from time to time if there's strain on the relationship? So when the baby arrives, this could strain your relationship. What would you, and let's just say it's a new strain. It's not a stress that you've experienced before. It's just something different kind of, happens, as does with a lot of couples where there's a new baby. What's your plan to try to make sure that whatever comes up in the relationship, that the relationship can stay very secure and intact?
I think the shingles came at the perfect time, because I think I am...
Said no one ever.
I am really obsessed about sleep, aren't I?
Yeah.
If I don't get so many hours, I'm going to get cranky. I had an extreme case of shingles. It started almost 2 months ago. Some of it's still on me now. I can still feel it. And when it manifested, I got this pain on my side. I could only lie on my side. And I ended up calling the hospital number in the middle of the night and telling them. But for weeks, I could only sleep on my side, and it was in so much pain. I was up every hour with it. And I think that's what we're going to have, isn't it? I'm going to have to get up in the night and do stuff.
So it broke your sleep pattern.
It brought me into this. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, so you feel you've been in some training.
Thank you, shingles.
Do you have any final questions for me in relation to parenting, or anything that you are kind of preempting could be a challenge, or any curiosities?
What do you think should be the challenges then?
Challenges? It depends what age. I think at first it's getting it into a sleep routine. I think it's going to be hell on earth. Remember my cousin, who we seen the other day, she's got 2 under 2. And she said, welcome to No Sleep Club. No.
Yeah.
Is there any tips or advice on getting the child to sleep?
There is actually some really good sleeping experts for babies. There's a book I can recommend by an author called Cheryl. I can't remember her last name, but I'll send you a link to her book because she's all about helping getting babies to sleep, because yeah, that can be really stressful. And if you can train your baby quite young and get them sleeping, then it makes your life completely different. So I'll send you the link on that.
That's the main thing, isn't it?
And what is the recipe for a child to be screwed up?
I will tell you the recipe. I have a whole career because of it. Lack of empathy. That, you know, of course, as humans, often humans can be very self-interested, but when there's a real problem with empathy in parents and they haven't done the work themselves, then it really impacts the child, because children need their feelings to be responded to. And, you know, and there's no perfect parenting at all, but if you can be empathic and you can really recognize your children's emotions and respond to them, then you're on a great path to be having a child who is happy and feels really loved.
Thank you.
It's been really helpful, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's been lovely speaking to you, and it's very exciting. Well done for being conscious parents. I think we should all live like this in our lives and be conscious about everything that we do. But it's nice to see people so early on in the journey, and while you've no idea exactly what's going to happen in the future, it's very exciting, and it's nice to just see that you want to be trying to receive the right information so you can do the best job you can.
Thanks. Let us know what you thought about this video in the comments. Please subscribe to Becky's YouTube channel, and I'll let Becky tell you guys right now where you can find her online. Do you want to tell the viewers?
You can find me at Private Therapy Clinic as my YouTube channel, and then I'm at Dr. Becky Spelman on Instagram and also TikTok.